Welcome everyone. My name is Trisha Park. I'm Associate Director of Workshops here at Cleaver Magazine. We are so happy to welcome you to our issue 48 contributors reading. We have a lot of really wonderful people who are going to be reading their work from our latest issue. I'm going to throw it to Karen Ryle, and then I'll be here to MC the rest of the evening.
Thank you, Trisha. Hello, everyone, and welcome all of you to Cleaver Magazine's issue number 48 contributors reading. We're so happy to have you here. My name is Karen Ryle, and I'm the co-founding and chief editor of Cleaver. 2025 marks our 12th year as a magazine in this world. We published our first full issue in March 2013. For those of you not familiar with Cleaver, we are a quarterly literary magazine. We publish fresh fiction, poetry, creative nonfiction, and flash every March, June, September, and December. We also publish book reviews, craft essays, and interviews, and a weekly newsletter where we send out writing tips by our contributors, staff, and community of readers. It's a super popular feature, so check it out and consider writing a writing tip for us. You'll have a big audience for it. In addition, we host a workshop and masterclass series, which I hope you will check out. Next Sunday afternoon, February 9th at 2 p.m. Eastern, we'll be holding a community Ass in Chair session, which is our cheeky monthly communal 90-minute commitment to your writing practice. It's $5 a session or $15 for 4. And on Saturday, February 16th, I'll be leading a community movement class called Embodied Resistance, which is also only $5 to participate in. On the 23rd, Beth Kephart will return for one of her popular 2-hour memoir workshops. This one is called First Person, Writing About Yourself with Complexity and Power. You can see all that on our classes page. About our name, cleave is a Janus word, also known as an auto-antonym, meaning both itself and its opposite. To cleave is both to stick tight and to fall away. A cleaver is the most broad-edged and brutally efficient kitchen knife, designed to be swung like a hammer for the most effective channel of force. Cleave also means to come together with strong attachment. Cleaver runs its literary magazine on 100% volunteer labor with many fine editors whose invaluable contributions make our magazine possible. I serve as head fiction editor, graphic designer, and chief cook and bottle washer. The buck stops here if you have any Cleaver-related issues. And speaking of issues, I'm tremendously proud of issue 48 with its sparkling collection of talented writers. Among them, we feature the semifinalists from our Duality Creative Nonfiction Contest. Thanks to all of you for your enthusiasm and support and for trusting us as stewards of your work. Take it away, Trisha.
Thanks, Karen. We're going to start first with Eden Royce, who's joining us from across the pond. Eden is a writer from Charleston, South Carolina, whose work has appeared in Jellyfish Review and Longleaf Review. She is a Shirley Jackson Award finalist and a lover of cinnamon ice cream. Her debut novel, Root Magic, is a Walter Dean Myers Award honoree and Mythopoeic Fantasy Award winner for Outstanding Children's Literature. Welcome, Eden.
Thank you so much for accepting this story to Cleaver. It is my first and hopefully not last item with Cleaver, and this is Your Childhood Was Witchcraft. Remember when you licked the blood from your scraped knees and elbows, cleaning your wounds like an animal would, the taste of metal and salt on your tongue. The pulse of pain lessened as you soothed yourself, unwilling to go back indoors to seek the comfort of those who no longer believed in the magic that called to you. When you were feral, in love with the outside, and it with you. It kept your secrets, shared its own, even if you did not truly understand. Dirt was a badge of honor on your clothes, your face, in your hair, a remnant of your communion with the divine earth. You felt free like a wild thing. What does an animal give the world? Itself. What do you? Your imagination, your awe. The time you spent lying on the ground after a run or a bike ride, sweat pulsing from your pores, letting your essence wet the grasses, seep into the ground as you sucked on the fruit of the land you plucked. Finger-staining berries, honeysuckle nectar, a sun-warmed plum or tomato. All you did was wait, and every flying, crawling thing came to you. You fed them, the mosquitoes you didn't see, buzzing in to take your blood, the butterflies you saw, holding still as they sipped your sweat and the tears on your cheeks from staring at the sun. Ants crawled away with the remnants of your feasts. You were training for your craft, reveling in what the earth held in trust for you. Crickets and cicadas sang your praises as the sun went down, and you understood that this was magic. Remember? Remember.
Next, we have David Lydon-Staley. David is an Irish-American writer and scholar based in Philadelphia. Yay. He teaches at the Annenberg School for Communication at the University of Pennsylvania, where he also runs the Addiction, Health, and Adolescence, also known as AHA Research Laboratory. He's currently undertaking an MFA in creative writing at Drexel University. His fiction has previously appeared in Jonathan, a queer fiction journal, and Glitter Wolf. Please welcome David.
Thanks so much for the introduction. I'm excited to read, and this is Prodigal Son. What time did you say he was coming? I asked the wife. I had the teapot and some cups out. But should I get the kettle boiling was the question. For it to be ready, you know? Didn't want the son and his... Well, didn't want them coming in without a hot cup of tea after their trek from the city. For the last time, she shouted from the living room. He said 8. That's right. I looked at the clock on the oven, 7:30. Oh, but I must add an hour. Daylight savings. Sure, what use is the time change anymore? It means the little ones are coming home from school in the dark. Medieval, that is. But it's 8:20 now. Have you never been late in your life, Pather, no? In a mood she was, but who would blame her? She had the house spotless, up since the birds were calling, greasing her elbow at the counters and the floors, and even at the cobwebs in the corners. Always able to see dirt where I saw nothing. You're only pretending you see nothing to get out of cleaning, she tells me. But I do try, honest to God. Well, I see these damn crumbs now, always falling from the toaster. Had better get a new one soon, otherwise the house will smell like burn when we use it. Good man yourself, the wife said, coming into the kitchen, weighed down by the mop bucket, and seeing me dropping the crumbs in the bin. I think we're in good shape. She groaned as she set the bucket down and groaned again as she came to a full stand, hands on her knees for leverage. Tea? Go on so. Their water would be faster reheating that way anyway. Mouth's as dry as an un's gash. Pather, you'll have your manners about you this evening. She looked at me gruff-like, but I think she liked that one, her smile running away from her a little. You're not running our son out the house again. Never ran him out in the first place, I mumbled. She could tell I said something, but her hearing's not what it used to be, so she didn't go after me. They always blamed the fathers. Could spend your life toiling away in the fields, making enough to scrape by, get them fitted in new clothes, food on the table, and they'd still look for more. Hugs and praise and a lot of talk about nothing. Sure, Dad said feck all to us growing up, and we turned out fine. The wife handed me the tea and I gulped it down. Wasn't lying about my thirst, so I wasn't. Well, she says to me. Well, what? I said back, and I knew I put the foot in it by the way she set her mug down. Your son's coming home. And what did she want from me stating that? Sure, I knew he was coming home. She would do this sometimes, the wife would, trying to get me to talk. Couldn't tell you why she wouldn't just ask a question, point blank. Putting the work on me she was, wanting me to look inside. But there's nothing behind these eyes you can't read from my face or hands. Open book I am. He is sure, I replied. I took another swig, no sugar in the tea. Hard to get used to not having it since my last visit to the dock. Will be nice to have him back for a bit. Any longer and we wouldn't recognize him. Wasn't so sure I'd recognize him now. But I didn't need to go saying that to her. Funny thing raising a son. When I think about him, and he just pops into my head sometimes, not meaning to like. But when a particular show comes on the telly, the doctor shows, he always liked those. Thought he might go become one for a minute. Dr. McDonough, can you imagine that? Or when they played that song he used to always be singing, Raglan Road, voice of an angel, people joked, but it honest to God sounded it like it sometimes. especially when he would sing in the church up there by himself, the Ichahune at Christmas Mass till his voice broke and you would only catch him singing with the door to his room closed. The funny thing is he's always how he looked when he was 10. Can't explain it. Just the head of blonde hair on him, white almost, whenever he pops into me head. Like the sun. Kids draw it yellow up in the corner, but if you were to look it straight on, if your eyes could stand it, you'd see it was scorching white. Probably almost brown his hair is these days. Happened to me too. No sun here in Ireland to keep it bright. That's my theory anyhow. And it will be good to meet his friend at last. She would keep going, talking till I said something. Could I not drink my tea in peace, no? And no friend is that he's bringing. They think I'm clueless, the lot of them. Behind the times. But some things God'll forgive and some he won't. Only looking out for his everlasting soul. At the end of the day, isn't that love? Never mind saying it out loud or congratulating or making a show to the world of your feelings with your hugs and your kisses. Time's nothing on this mortal coil, the Father does be saying on a Sunday. And I believe it too. Blink of an eye and I'm in my 50s already. Must be more coming to us. The wife made a show of getting 2 bedrooms ready, washing the sheets and hanging them on the line, as if the 2 won't be sneaking in the hallways when I'm gone to bed. Dad'll never know, they'll say. What are they waiting for? For me to die, surely. Once the owl fella's gone, we can stop the charade. No point getting him angered up about it now. Only a few more years left in him. Not sure if I'm more angry that they think I'm ignorant enough that I don't know, or that they made up their minds about what I'd do if they told me the truth of the matter. Do they think I'd kill the lad, my own flesh and blood? Just want him safe, and safe forever, like. Throwing so much away for what he thinks is happiness. There's no happiness in it, though, not long term. If he kept up his Sundays at the church, he'd see it all clear. Pather. Yes, Eileen. They're here now, Astor. She leaned over and patted my eyes with the tissue, sweating me eyes is all. And they were here. Could hear the engine wind down to nothing, 2-door slam and the crunch of the stone outside. I drained the tea and went to the kettle, flipped the switch to get the water hot for them, for my little boy and his fella.
Up next, we have Chris Rosales. Chris is from Paramount, Los Angeles, California. He is the author of Word is Bone from 2019 and Broken River Books, winner of the International Latino Book Award. His short stories have appeared in Both Sides, an anthology of border noir, in 2020 from Polis Agora Books, among other anthologies, journals, and magazines in the US and abroad. Most recently, Chris's writing workshops fostered essays by dreamers, which he collected and co-edited in an anthology of dreams from an impossible journey, winning those dreamers an International Latino Book Award in 2023.
Thank you all. I'm grateful to be here in such great company. Abuelita planting jars at base in rattling cane. Whisking lilies. To elude your curve, a petal in rotation only hints, spoked light, foot flat in utterance, shoestring. To you, they give their flavors, shelled by heat and stride, shorter lover with proud arm drape of a stole. In the book is a sticker. We've all been loved from slant streets that led them to us. What brings the sugar cane ripening in the sun? Intoxication, a new sharpness, a care for attachment I've never let go of punching. The cane bow blown wide for plucking fragments and sprung threads. Singing is braiding with light, the feeling of time in the lips. The meniscus in the glass jar, higher than its edges. Abuelita said the jars in gardens. Scare away cats and spirits, eyes widened by water.
Up next, we have Tracie Adams. Tracie is a writer and teacher in rural Virginia. Her work has appeared or is forthcoming in Bull, Does It Have Pockets, Anodyne Magazine, The Right Launch, Bright Flash Literary Review, The Dead Mule School of Southern Literature, Bodega, Sheep's Head Review, and others. She's also a Pushcart Prize nominee of 2025. Welcome, Tracie.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to be reading We Don't Talk, which is a very flash creative nonfiction piece. We don't talk. We have a pact, an unwritten and unspoken one. We don't talk. Unless you count that one time every year when I call you and we chat for over an hour while your hair dries naturally because you'd just gotten out of the shower when the phone rang. That will be our first topic. We'll talk about how bad your hair is going to look because you didn't blow dry it, and starting over by re-wetting it never works. We agree on that much at least. We agree on lots of things, actually, except for all the real stuff that's too heavy to lift, too overbearing and glaring, too true. Like when I tried to tell you that I was molested and you asked me, how does something like that even happen? I mean, why do you think it happened to you? Yeah, stuff like that. And the other time I tried to tell you about the panic attacks I was having due to the trauma, and you said, trauma? What trauma? I don't have to worry about my hair drying naturally because my phone never rings. You don't call, so we don't talk mostly. There was that one time recently when you replied to a text I had sent you with pics of me and my grandson. Your text? I like your hair. I don't know what you're thinking all those months when we don't talk. And you don't know me, your oldest daughter, who sang with you to the top of our lungs into wooden spoons as we made dinner together, stopping between verses of Goodbye Yellow Brick Road to laugh hysterically. Our pact is working out just great. I love you the best I can from far away. I mean, it's at least 30 minutes a drive to your house. And that's okay. I haven't needed a mother anyway. I gave up on that silliness when it started to pulsate like a deep wound that wouldn't heal. I found some substitutes, some understudies to play the role of mother. These are amazing women in my life who aren't afraid to commit to being emotionally vulnerable and available. They've nurtured and nourished me. They've done the mothering. They brought meals of comfort food after I had a baby and prayed for my healing when I had surgery. They've held my hand in silence while I grieved and spoke wise words of encouragement when I doubted. They called. Maybe you don't like me saying this. Maybe you disagree. Maybe it strikes a nerve. You don't have to worry. Next year when I call, I won't bring it up. We'll talk about your hair instead.
Up next, we have Sinclair Cabocel. Sinclair studied English at the College of William and Mary as a 1693 scholar and at Oxford University. He's pursuing an MFA at Columbia University. His fiction has been published in the Chicago Quarterly Review, J Journal, and Fail Better. He is currently querying Hyperreal, an ambitiously eclectic short story collection, and Folly Bridge, a novel about a trio of despondent Oxford scholars being driven to insanity by a flock of psychotic geese. Welcome, Sinclair.
Hey, thank you so much, Trisha. It's very great to be here. I will be reading an opening selection from my short story, The Armageddon Surf Club, which I had the pleasure of having published in Cleaver, this most recent issue. When the trumpets sounded, Monica was propped up on her elbows, watching Mateo shred from the sandy shore. The other beachgoers swiveled their heads, as if they might find some passing band or a thumping boombox. But the resonating noise seemed to have no source, as inherent to the air as the humidity. The seagulls soon joined in with their own discordant shrieks, while the sandpipers dotting the surf all retreated to the dunes in choppy little steps. Pretty hot for March, Monica thought, sitting up to give her leathered shoulders a break. Vacationers and locals alike fled toward dry land. Swimmers ran from the water with their suits still stuck to their skin, not taking the time to rinse the muck from their feet. Sunbathing mothers grabbed their children and hobbled away, towels and foldable chairs clamped tight in their oily armpits. The rest of Mateo's crew, in contrast, quickly settled back into surfing and spectatorship, perhaps seeing that neither he nor Monica had reacted much at all. The setting sun had begun bleeding out into the sky like a broken red yolk, but Mateo kept riding his wave, sculpted and stoic, as though the earth would be knocked off its orbit before he'd be tossed from his board. Monica had always adored how unshakable he was, a bronze bust of a man, his face rarely shifted from a daydreaming contentment, which made what seldom emotions he did share which were generally limited to humor or horniness, that much more pleasant to bask in. The dying wave brought Mateo to a soft stop, after which he stepped down from his board and high-fived his best friend, Diego. The man pointed to the sky, the gesture momentarily warping the tattooed crucifix across his back. He spoke too quietly for Monica to hear. Mateo only shrugged and started back out toward the shattered horizon. His constancy was a comfort Monica had never known away from that shore, and she had grown into it. After such relentless sunning, they could have passed for the same dark square in a Pantone swatch, and it became difficult for her to recall that she'd been someone else before all this. Memories of waitressing or brief stints as a temp worker had all but faded in her mind, along with any recollection of how her mother had booted her from her house after high school, declaring it would force the daughter to, as she said, get her shit together. In reality, her mother simply wanted her new boyfriend to move in, and Monica was probably ruining the vibe. Regardless, work was dreadful, and paying rent even more so. So when she stumbled upon the shacks by the shore, along with the surfers who had made a life away from life, she fell into their patterns effortlessly. Even Monica's relationship with Mateo felt like something she'd been slotted into, making it all the more comfortable. Any lingering fear of abandonment was assuaged by the fact that Mateo had but a singular lust, namely, for spending each day on his board and each night silently sipping beer around a bonfire with his friends. Like any good groupie, Monica didn't co-participate with her object of affection. She was content to laze her days away, watching, certain that nothing could have convinced her to walk away, cataclysms included. "These are probably the end times," Diego declared over dinner, scooping up some chowder from his bowl with a rough torn piece of sourdough as the fire blazed before them. The stars above, having grown painfully swollen in the wounded sky, were weeping a ceaseless storm of meteors. "Think the Savior can surf?" "Not as good as Mateo," Monica said. Her boyfriend closed his eyes and smiled, and she nestled deeper into his arms as she took another swallow of wine. One of the newer girls had brought a few bottles of cheap red, having had the good sense to offer her one as tribute. Unlike Monica, to whom this life was, in fact, a lifestyle, the other women were merely tourists, whether dating Diego or one of the other men, or drifting through as a novelty. They rarely stayed longer than a month before realizing that they, like performative Buddhists, weren't that ready to let go of their worldly commitments. Monica, in contrast, could not be considered to be engaging in any sort of escapism. Catching rays and watching Mateo were her only obligations. Before the conversation could drift into a more pleasant topic, Diego spoke up again. "Maybe we should pack up and move inland." Monica scooted herself upright and raised her eyebrows. Anxious looks were exchanged around the circle, though it was hard to tell whether the consternation was an echo of hers or a response to it. She leaned forward onto her knees, pressuring Diego to elaborate. Mateo puffed his cheeks and drew back the arm he had draped around her. "The signs couldn't be more obvious." Diego set his bowl down, picked up his drink, and turned to the woman he was sharing the splintery bench with. "Put your hand in the flames." Desperate to impress, perhaps, she reached out towards the blaze, baring gritted teeth, until she finally lurched her arm forward and let her fingers dance among the tongues of fire. It's cold," the girl reported, withdrawing her hand and inspecting it for burns. Monica hadn't registered it until then, but she was growing chilly outside of Mateo's embrace, despite being only a few feet away from the flames. The chowder wasn't that warm either. "See, Diego, everything is out of order. The first coming last, and the last coming first. There's no mistaking it. This is the apocalypse." "You're just superstitious," Monica said. Diego had been raised in Mexico by an expansive family of religious nutjobs who knew what lunacies his subconscious had marinated in. What worried her more, however, was that he was the only one besides her who could convince Mateo of anything. And what would her and Mateo be without the beach? He pointed to the sky. "You want to tell me this isn't real?" "So what if it's real?" she blurted, feeling Mateo tilt his head upwards from behind her. "Nuclear families are real. 9-to-5 jobs are real. Do you suddenly believe in this shit too?" Diego looked down into his plastic cup, where he must have had a heavy splash of tequila twirling with a cut of lime. "All I'm saying is I've got a lot of sins to repent for, and I won't have time to get through them all if we stick around here when the seas begin to boil."
Up next, we have Connor Fisher. Connor is the author of A Renaissance with Eyelids from Schism Press from 2024, The Isotope of I, also from Schism Press in 2021, and 3 poetry and hybrid chapbooks, including The Unholy Moon from Sallow Press in 2024. He has an MFA from the University of Colorado at Boulder and a PhD in creative writing and English from the University of Georgia. His writing has appeared in journals including Denver Quarterly, Random Sample Review, Tammy, Tiger Moth Review, and Clade Song. He currently lives and teaches in northern Mississippi. Welcome, Connor.
Thank you, Trisha, and everyone. I appreciate the introduction. I'm very happy to be here, and I'll be reading my flash piece called Testimony. I never touched the horse in question, although at various points in my life I have, largely against my own will, been made to saddle, groom, ride, and stroke horses. I did once approach the horse, an allegedly beautiful animal, brown and dappled with white spots along its flank, but that was from a distance. The horse and I were separated by a fence, and the animal was halfway across a large field. The horse appeared indifferent to my presence, although the cowboy, the man who had teased and cajoled me until I approached the horse in question, and who had been my lover 2 summers prior, when I worked as a ranch hand after fleeing my brutish boyfriend one black midnight, his furious screams ringing in my ears. This cowboy had assured me that the horse was not indifferent, but exhibited tremendous curiosity about my presence at the edge of its field. 2 weeks later, the horse was dead, and I, in gossip-riddled circles, was named as a suspect. I have never made death threats against any creature, living or dead, not even against my repulsive one-time boyfriend, a man who would routinely lock me in our bedroom when he left the house and, on occasion, threatened to burn me with a cattle brand. And I have myself only once received a threat of brutality, although this was in a foreign country and may have been the result of a breakdown in translation. The poor young man who, I believed at the time, threatened to remove the skin from my body with a paring knife and then remove my lifeless head, may have merely been inquiring if I could point him towards the nearest fruit stand, although his body language and demeanor were undeniably hostile, and the knife he grasped in one fist came at multiple points uncomfortably close to my own throat. I feel the utmost pity towards the horse in question, the creature having had its head removed from its body, but I am in no way knowledgeable about or responsible for this gruesome act, the likes of which seems highly derivative of a scene in a famous film in which a horse is decapitated for the purpose of, if I remember correctly, intimidating a corrupt filmmaker. Yet it is questionable whether it can be said that real life is derivative of art, life being at its core a sequence of events that happen without apparent connective relation rather than a series of scripted and planned actions to be performed by professional actors in an imaginary world. I've never taken pleasure from a living creature's death, and I am profoundly opposed to the way the horse was killed, especially since the animal possessed tremendous loyalty, if the cowboy can be believed. Although while I knew him, this cowboy possessed a bad habit of using superlative language rather thoughtlessly. I was, to him, the most elegant and the most sensual of paramours, praise which I took to heart until I encountered the cowboy in the bed of another man, making passionate love, upon which occasion I withdrew a book of matches from my pocket, lit one, and placed it beneath the still bouncing bed of the cowboy and his new lover, and I admit that I did not look back as I left that cowboy's home, a trailer that, in retrospect, was filthy and poorly maintained. But surely there are worse ways for the horse to have died than even the horror of decapitation, such as being slowly drowned or asphyxiated, such as burning to death while hobbled, such as ingesting a poison that would leave the animal paralyzed and in tremendous agony. If I had, God forbid it, but I must pursue the line of thought to its conclusion, if I had killed the horse in question, I would not have used a blade or a garrote, but would have pressed the barrel of a pistol, clean and black, against the horse's temple, and, while the horse ate an apple from my outstretched hand, I would have pulled the trigger smooth and slow, and killed the horse at once with the merciful tip of a bullet.
We have next Jeff Gabel. Jeff's fiction has appeared in Valparaiso Fiction Review, Volume 1 Brooklyn, Litro magazine, and elsewhere. He's been nominated for a Pushcart Prize and holds an MFA from Warren Wilson. He lives in his hometown, Denver, with his wife and 2 daughters. Please welcome Jeff Gabel.
Thanks, Trisha. Thanks, Karen, for putting this together. This is really inspiring to hear all of your work and be a part of this. I'll be reading a full story, flash fiction piece called Spitfire. My mother-in-law believes in signs. She believes in synchronicity and premonition. This wouldn't be so bad if it weren't for her obsession with death. When Neil and I told her we were naming our girl after a singer we admired, she warned us, that singer died young, you know, an addict, choked on her own vomit. There are photos if you don't believe me. I believe you, I said. Even so, she replied, looking at me sideways, she was never her true self. What are you, her medium? Neil told me to take it easy. He's endlessly endeared by his mother's superstitions. She's kooky, he once said, that's all. For months, our girl did somersaults in my wound, breached one day, sideways the next, her bottom pressed against my bladder. We went in for an aversion, but when the OB pressed the transducer onto my belly, our girl was head down. That night, she flipped again. This went on until, finally, a week after my due date, I was in constant pain and we decided to induce labor. My mother-in-law begged us to wait. She'll come when she's ready, she said. I nearly slapped her. Neil said something diplomatic about how it was my body and my baby, my choice. After 15 hours of labor, our girl was head down but had no intention of dropping. They injected me with pitocin, stuck a Foley balloon into my cervix, broke my water. None of it worked. The anesthesiologist stabbed me 3 times at the base of my spine until he got it right and I was numb, shaking so violently from the hormones and the epidural that Neil looked utterly petrified. I couldn't feel it when they cut me open and pulled her out, but I heard her. I saw her. Wailing, limbs quivering, eyes shut, walnut hair matted against her scalp. She was perfect. A few hours later, we called my mother-in-law to tell her the good news. Patty Wood's granddaughter drowned in a pool, she announced suddenly, 18 months old, can you believe it? It made national news. I'll send you the link. Please don't, I said. Neil held his phone away as if I had tried to snatch it. I grabbed his wrist and pulled him close. Let me guess, I spat. The girl's name was Natalie. My mother-in-law went silent. What the fuck? Neil mouthed. I shrugged, feeling adrenalized, then childish and cruel. When his mother was a girl, she saw splendor in the grass 8 times, convinced that if she channeled her energy in just the right way, she might change the ending. 6 decades later, 4 after Natalie Wood drowned, she weeps every time it plays on TCM. That night, at 3:30, the witching hour, I'm often reminded, I woke to silence and rolled over to check on our girl. Her eyes were wide, mouth open. Her arms wriggled underneath Neil's perfectly wrapped swaddle. Her skin was turning bluish-gray. At first, what was happening did not occur to me. Then something clicked. I tried to sit up. A searing pain detonated in my abdomen, blazing through my insides to the tips of my fingers. My body collapsed like a marionette with snapped strings. I shrieked and managed to slap Neil awake. The moment he saw what was happening, he pulled our girl from the bassinet, turned her face down, and started smacking her on the back. Nothing. I snatched her and did the same, only harder. Still nothing. My baby is dying, I shouted. Neil. Neil sprinted out of the room. I lifted our girl upright. She was now violet. Her little expression, moments ago tightening, receded from me. I was sobbing, staring with wretched resolve into her eyes, her irises 2 brown speckled galaxies of electric blue. For some reason, it embarrasses me now to think of it, I tricked myself into believing that if only I held her gaze, I might draw back the life so quick to drain from her. Her pupils quivered, her mouth agape. I went silent. And in that moment, what image should pop into my head but my mother-in-law, 10 years old, plopped in a front row seat at the Esquire, lips pursed, hands folded in her lap, staring ahead with unwavering intent while soft technicolor light bounced off the silver screen and splashed across her face. Another flash of pain shot up from my incision. I clenched my daughter. I shouted. I screamed. Then, just like in Backdraft when Kurt Russell crashes into a nursery ablaze, the door swung open and in came Neil, followed by 2 nurses, perturbed and disbelieving. The nurse in front took one look at our girl and said, "Oh shit." She bolted over, grabbed my baby, and smacked her violently 3 times on the back. 1, 2, 3. A glob of mucus the size of a cherry shot out of her mouth, and there it was, the sweet, sweet sound of her wailing. Her color returned, her face scrunched up, and her tiny arms broke free of Neil's swaddle, my little Spitfire. For months, I avoided telling my mother-in-law. I thought she'd treat us like we cheated death and someday must pay our due. One day, exhausted, I let slip what happened. Her reaction totally disarmed me. "You woke up," she said. "You couldn't hear her choking, and yet you woke up." "We were lucky," I replied. Then, counter to everything I had ever come to understand of her, she did not insist I was wrong, did not cite some weird aspect of the occult I merely refused to see. She just placed her hand on mine and looked at me tenderly. Ever since, she never mentions what happened, and when she looks at Spitfire, her eyes are warm, in awe, as if for her entire life she has been storing every ounce of love just for our little girl.
Up next, we have Coleman Bigelow. Coleman's work has appeared recently or is upcoming in Bull, Bending Genres, Cease, Cows, Flash Boulevard, Ghost Parachute, and Gooseberry Pie Lit. His first flash fiction collection, In Rare Cases and Other Unfortunate Circumstances, was published in 2023. Please welcome Coleman.
Thank you, Tricia, and so great to be with you all. I've taken so many wonderful workshops with Cleaver, so it's a thrill to have this story at Cleaver, and here it is. It's called Because at Least We Drink Fresh Roast. When we first dropped out of design school, coffee was our everything, the intoxicating grounds providing just the jittering jolt our imaginations required. Each sip sending us bareback on burrows ascending through dripping cloud forests, our machetes hacking a path to the perfect bean. We soon discovered the best way to fuel our fix was by becoming the baristas ourselves. So we claimed our destiny and committed to serving the world its next caffeinated masterpiece. But now, our only notable creation is our heart-shaped latte art. So we tear out of that Java shack in our broken down bugs and rusting rabbits and hightail it to the bar to nab the best corner stools. With our Pabst Blue ribbons and beam chasers secured, we soak in the smoky dim and put on Patsy Cline and Johnny Cash. And when the place fills up, we switch to sexual healing and sway between the pool tables, sticks in hand, praying for some virgin competition, hoping for some freshly inked cleavage to pour out over our polished cues, for the explosive clack of balls to inspire another blissful collision. Some nights we lasso fun, and other nights we leave untethered. And some nights, when we can no longer drive, we stumble through the neighborhoods we never escaped. Occasionally, we crash parties over in Normal Town, where our weary-eyed former classmates have picket fenced themselves into a world of screaming babies and inflatable lawn ornaments. We drain whatever's left of their makeshift kitchen bars, and we snicker at their magnet affirmations and spin their coffee capsule carousels and stare at their unholy Keurigs. And we judge them. Oh God, how we judge them.
Up next, we have Eileen Toomey. Eileen was actually going to be reading for our last reading, but unfortunately fell ill, so we invited her to join us tonight. Eileen is also second place winner of our Duality Creative Nonfiction Contest. So I'll read what our contest judge Clifford Thompson said about this piece. This short gem manages to tell us almost nothing and yet everything about the girls of the title, capturing the complex dance between person and environment. The descriptions of what these girls pass on their way to McDonald's bring all of our senses to life. We like and fear for these girls in all their scrappiness and joyfulness. Like us, they know little and much. Eileen has been published in The Rumpus, Cleaver Magazine, Oyster River Pages, and various literary magazines. Her poem Immunotherapy won second prize in our Cleaver Form and Form Breaking competition and was nominated for a Pushcart Prize in 2023. Eileen is a book, ink writer, and an instructor at Project Right Now, a nonprofit writing organization located in Red Bank, New Jersey. She's currently working on a memoir about her childhood in the working class neighborhood, Canaryville, on Chicago's South Side. Welcome, Eileen.
Before I start, I do just also want to take a moment to thank you guys, to thank Tricia and Karen and the whole Cleaver team for putting this event together, and really generally just for the way you guys support your writers. It's been incredible the way you share things on social media and the newsletter with the opportunity to do the writing tips. and the craft essays, and I've been able to take some of your classes. Yeah, anyway, thank you very much. I really feel like I'm part of a bigger family or team, so thanks. All right, with that done, Canaryville girls. When I was 13, my friends and I walked from our neighborhood to the nearest McDonald's. It was 2 miles away, cutting through the area of Chicago that once housed the old Union stockyards and later became an industrial park. Flanked by factories and dry storage, Sweetheart Cup, where Sharon's mother worked, Allen Brothers, Moo and Oink, Gordon Foods, Millard Refrigerated Distribution Center, and Chiapetti Lamb. Canaryville boys on stolen Huffies roared down piles of debris, past demolished kill sheds and chop floors. City lots, 1 block deep, punctuated with jutted gray Monazzo granite factory tours, emitting ammonia, chlorine, carbon dioxide, and Budweiser caps. We were neighborhood girls rising from garbage heaps. In its heyday, Chicago's Union Stockyards housed 475 acres, enough space to hold 2,000 football fields of cattle, hogs, and lamb. The live animals were shipped here from farms all over the country. The stockyards worked like an assembly line, but in reverse. Animals came to be disassembled, packaged, and distributed. A certain smell, not quite death, filled the air. Sometimes cattle cars rattled by Graham's school. You'd smell them and hear them before you'd see them. Little lamb tails or calves or cows smashed up against the crates. Black eyes shining like marbles. I never looked too hard. My mother reminded me to just be happy that I wasn't a steak. The area's physical environment and economic life were shaped by meatpacking from the 1860s until the industry's decline. Canaryville's name may have originally derived from the legions of sparrows who populated the area, feeding off stockyard refuse and grain from railroad cars. But the term also applied to the neighborhood's rambunctious youth. It's wild canaries. We didn't know that a refinery fire had twisted along this route way back in 1910. The spirit of the dead firemen who could have been our grandfathers spinning back at the animal grease flames. The hydrants were turned off because the winters were so cold. 21 firemen died in the Union Stockyards fire that night, cleaning up after Swift and Armour. The largest number of firemen to perish in one single event until 9/11. Not a moment for grace before the support wall crumbled. Not a plaque or a memorial until 2004. We split a pack of Newports, 5 cigarettes per girls. Beneath the rush of tractor trailers on the Persian Road overpass, stepping through cement and weeds, ruffle bags, a half-empty Mountain Dew, and its tank green liquid spew. We had nothing else to do but walk to McDonald's with our crumpled dollars. I turned to Jess and we did a quick Mary Mac, smacking our hands together, lit cigs between grins. The sun beat down between city saplings, singeing Farrah Fawcett swoops. Candy bar wrappers crunched like leaves beneath white Converse shoes scrawled with pen. Best friends forever. Disco sucks. Freebird. White girls at the CTA bus stop wearing shorts under Catholic school uniforms. A weekend full of French fries and truck exhaust tucked in our bellies. Hurry up, Jess urged as we ran across Persian Road holding hands. The prairie returns in sneaky ways, chemicalized and compromised, growing funny and strong girls between cracks in the sidewalk. The deep taproot is so hard to extricate. One tendril for friendship, one for the golden arches. Look at me, we say. Go fuck yourselves.
we have Jeffrey Moss. After 32 years guiding 13 and 14-year-olds in crafting their worlds, Jeffrey G. Moss has finally started following some of his own writing advice. Yay. His creative nonfiction has appeared in Kagabi, Hungry Mountain Review, Under the Gum Tree, and Hippocampus, among others. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Karen, Tricia, Cleaver, and for everybody who's here. This is a piece called Yellow, a flash creative nonfiction piece. It is a late October afternoon, and darkness is coming on quick. Phyllis DeLuna, one of 3 widowed sisters who live across the street, is standing on her front stoop, waving me over. We're putting the garden to bed, she says. These are the last of the autumn blooms. Come, come, make Mom happy. Standing on the steps of the DeLuna house, I think back to the long summer days that bled seamlessly into lingering dusk. Phyllis and Angie and Mary in faded housecoats and slippers, speaking Italian, deadheading, spraying for aphids, working coffee grounds and eggshells into the Brooklyn soil, while Mom is perched some evenings near paralyzed in a folding beach chair on our cement porch. She sips Seagrams, smokes Marlboro Reds, and seethes. She's 30. Dad crushed their youthful promise like petals under boots when he went to work one morning 4 years ago, and as they agreed, he didn't come home that night. Mom churns and agonizes and resents. She does her best to conceal the pain. I'm 10 now and beginning to recognize the incessant ember smoldering in her heart. Hold them gentle, like a baby, Phyllis says, careful of the thorns. Mom greets me in the foyer. I'm cradling dozens of yellow roses. She leans over, inhales, sighs, draws deeper as if breathing in a newborn's scalp. The roses go into the cut glass vase 2, 3 at a time. She sniffs the open ones. Those DeLunas are too good, she says, too good to me. When we're done, Mom dials the rotary phone. You're angels, Phyllis, you and your sister, she says. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I remember thinking that the yellow flowers are like the Earth's sun, the only thing that can revitalize Superman when he's had a near fatal encounter with kryptonite. Alcohol and opioids could not eliminate a lifetime of searing aches. Asters, daffodils, daisies, irises, chrysanthemums, and roses, however, I learned, could assuage it. This October, I am 60, out walking my dogs. I don't know if Mom knows. I don't know if she knows her primary care physician called to inform me, her health proxy, that her body can no longer tolerate the daily bedside dialysis that has been sustaining her for months. I do not know if she knows that despite her will to fight, despite her wishes to avoid end-of-life palliative care, it is time to let go. I am desperate to share the scene before me. The late afternoon sunlight streaming through the birch and sycamores on Prospect Lane filters as if through stained glass windows. I place a FaceTime call. Hey, Mom, I start. Hi, baby, she mutters. I wanted to show you where I am, I say, and flip the camera to reveal the glowing golden corridor. I hold it steady for a reverential moment. Oh, she exclaims weakly, how beautiful. She draws from the cannula. Reminds me of the DeLunas, remember? Of course, I say. Angels they were, she says. 3 angels. Yes, yes, yes. One enunciated yes for each angelic sister. Look, she says, turning the phone around. The yellow roses you sent the other day. They're open. Another audible breath. Cannula and roses. They smell so sweet. You always knew. I cleave unto her use of the past tense. She turns her camera around, but her ruddy, drawn face is way too close to the lens. The device is too heavy. So glad, I say, and blow a kiss. A week after her passing, I am preparing our suburban yard for winter. I've raked, mulched, pulled up sunflower stalks, cut back coneflowers. When I look over to gauge the work needed for the shrubbery, I notice 3 orange-tinged yellow rosebuds, the last of the autumn blooms. I clip and, careful of the thorns, as if holding a newborn, I bring them inside, place them one by one in a small glass vase. I make a note to take the cut glass one from her place. These buds will open, fill the room with subtle perfume, and wilt away soon enough. I will myself back outside. Daylight is fading.
Next, we have Krista. Krista Puttler has been fortunate to call many places home, including Norfolk, Virginia, the Philippines, Guam, Hawaii, Japan, and a stateroom on an aircraft carrier. Her nonfiction has appeared in As You Were, The Military Review, Collateral, Tagaby, and The Wrath-Bearing Tree. Her fiction and poetry have appeared in Intima, Door is Ajar, and Heartwood Literary Magazine. A medium roast coffee gal at heart, she is pleasantly surprised by how much she loves Italian espresso. She lives outside Naples, Italy, with her husband and 3 daughters. Welcome, Krista.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm going to read an excerpt from my story, Origin Story. Mama, where do stories come from? They come from a dog's ear. No, they don't. They come from your fingertips. You mean fingernails? No, I don't. Pens, pencils, keyboards, blood, pain, anticipation. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? What it takes to make a good story. Exactly. Sylvia planned to cut her left thumb at the knuckle. She needed to write a Western, and she knew that all the good ones came from that joint. On her last attempt at an original cowgirl story, she had sliced open her right thumb joint, but it didn't work. The story never made it from her brain to her notebook. Perhaps that was because it was her right hand, and Sylvia was right-handed. Perhaps that story failed to come out because it was the first time she had attempted to write a Western, or because she was wearing the wrong color underwear, or the cake needed to come out of the oven before it burned the house down, or because of a lot of things. But maybe this time the left thumb would be different. She had, after all, perfected the ritual. Sylvia picked up the knife with her right hand. The old slice on her right thumb had finally healed, and the skin edges had mended into a thin, pink scar. In a few weeks, that scar would look like one of the regular thumb joint wrinkles, and the story attempt would only be remembered in the cutting. Sylvia looked at her left thumb. Before she could think too long on which thumb wrinkle to use, she held the knife, blade side down over the one closest to the nail, and pressed the side of her thumb up into the cold steel. She blinked. She moved her thumb along the length of the blade, keeping it pressed there until it gently rose up the end of the blade, past the tip, and out into the air. She exhaled in one forced gasp. Did she really do it? She grabbed her thumb tip. It moved freely. It was attached to the rest of the thumb by only a thin piece of skin between the nail and the knuckle. Sylvia bent the tip all the way back, and the nail rested on the wrinkled skin of the first part of the thumb. A white joint capsule poked out like the underside of a fish belly. She moved the tip back towards the end of the thumb. As the cut skin edges relaxed, small red dots bubbled up and collected together. They tumbled over in a stream of red and down into the palm of her hand. She placed the tip back on the thumb. The blood stopped for a beat. Then a red drop slipped over the cut edge. Then another and another. Sylvia moved her hand off the table and down to her side. She shook her whole arm. The cut tip of her thumb wobbled with each shake, blood splattering the white linoleum. She had to make sure the story made it past the elbow. No one knew why the story stopped there. Sylvia thought it was because the elbow joint was actually made up of 3 bones, not 2. And instead of 1 joint, the 3 bones created 2, a hinge and a pivot. The 3 bones allowed you to hold a breakfast tray away from your body. The 3 bones allowed you to rest your cheek in your hand when your elbow was on the table. The 3 bones held such a precise location in relation to each other that if they were misaligned by just a few millimeters, a child would refuse to shake your hand or assist in getting into and out of a coat, or pick up a fork to feed themselves. Sylvia's daughter had refused to give her a hug for an entire day, still thinking she was faking it, even after her arm hung at her side, immobile long into the night, even after Sylvia had to secure the seatbelt over her arm on the way to the emergency room. Sylvia had thought her daughter would just snap out of it and start moving her arm normally again. When they had arrived at the hospital, Sylvia was shocked at the speed with which her daughter was brought back to the treatment room. Only when they were hustled and hushed behind a flower print curtain did Sylvia realize this was actually going to be a problem. What if her daughter really would not be able to move her arm ever again? What kind of mother did that make her? What horrible surgery and prodding and rehabilitation would Sylvia have to give consent for? And all of this was surely made worse by the 1.5-day delay. By the time the doctor walked in, Sylvia was pacing, hyperventilating, and thoroughly ignoring her daughter's whimpers and requests to return home. The doctor swung back the curtain and waved to Sylvia. He actually smiled a little. Then he knelt down next to her daughter, took her hand in his as if to shake it, rotated her palm up to the ceiling, then brought her hand up to her shoulder. Nursemaid elbow, the doctor said. She should be good to go. Pivot, and then a hinge.
Next, we have Herman Beavers. Herman's most recent poems have appeared in the Langston Hughes Colloquy, Mellus, Versadelphia, Cleaver Magazine, the American Arts Quarterly, and Supplement, Volume 2. His poems are anthologized in the volumes Obsession, Sistinas for the 21st Century, Who Will Speak for America, and in the forthcoming volume, Show Us Your Papers. His chapbook, Obsidian Blues, was published in 2017 by Agape Editions as part of its Morning House chapbook series. His latest books are Geography and the Political Imaginary in the Novels of Toni Morrison and the Vernel Poems. In 2023, he was selected to be a resident fellow at La Maison du Doramar in Minervis, France. He serves on the advisory boards of Modern Fiction Studies, the Black Scholar, Public Humanities, and African American Review. Welcome, Herman.
Being in Cleaver is like coming home. So thank you, Karen, and to the staff. I'm going to read poems, though I've enjoyed hearing fiction. This first poem is the one that appears in issue 48. It's called True North. Sidereal and reassuring, light attired in the color of plums, aching with sap, the trees throb of sweetness, vexing me. Grass browning under its pointed stare, a groundhog, back curved among the sycamore leaves, presses close against the gravel, dragging its famished, sullen ribcage. The night crashes open. Twigs and mud, stale bread, so little motivation. In the chime of twilight, in the reel of things, escape a scheme so dazzling it brings me to tears. I can't help but to hug myself warm. In despondent and dubious skirmish, I wave colorful flags like a poultice, shifting away from all that moaning, the click and wander of the compass. My thrash, my umbrage, my sleepwalk, my bottomland, and isthmus forever straining toward true north. Next poem is Ars Poetica number 9. Crisis of faith, passing through dreamscape as flat and dark as a black matte painting, depicting an encounter from the vortex that is my past. There's an outline of a woman's face, a headscarf impersonating the howl of the storm, shards of a song affrontando. Shipwrecked across a hurricane's diaspora, pride lodged inside a tattered myth. My body turns to air, and just now I'm writing spiritual checks my body won't cash. Disbelief shining from every face I pass. Just now, a woman, her gray eyes overcast, asking me my name, my song's rubble, lolling there. Study number 1. A woman's eyes cut my face, Iris is peeling back my facades, tacit agreements, the vacated corridors of my past, its clumsy navigation of the discolored tragedy, its cold might-have-beens, her ears blind, her tongue a fretless guitar, her body singing, its fake book of old afflictions. Study number 2. Dreaming in flatted fifths. I'm making a record on prestige, a nickel's worth of scores heaped and scrubbed in a white attic. My axe polished to starshine, mind a plucked string. I soloed my shadow into Gordian knots, trundled home, ignored my Irish cousin's restless haint, fell into bed wearing every single stitch. Gash. Fist landing on the mark. Rage and open bomb, an abysmal song, a sound dead as a stark sky. Hallway piling with children, atheist and weirdly smug, shrieking across Babylon, claiming the indigo ink, swimming with stars. Murmur of ache from 1,000 bodies. The wind, a lonely gash in a single fold of grief. There's a solitary elm, its skin cooling, the pull of every raucous ghost. Study number 3. Triangles of sunlight clean as grace. The water tower shivers its in awestruck mercy, unfettered and dreads clangorous maelstrom. Minstrelsy's indignant theory of space. There's the truck we could have with grief, this sundering, this choke sob, this concerto for left hand and scar. And I'll end with Obsidian Blues number 28, Gospel. And it has an epigraph from Beyonce. The past and the future merge to meet us here. Obsidian Blues number 28, Gospel. Her heart, a building of many stories, surging with knives, lips bee-stung, her mascara scrawled across the pages of a secret book, schooled in the metaphysics of handjob and blood clutch, her eye bangs against the day's rushes, filled with cold new bodies, pinioned in a council of magnificent sores. There's the organ's blue caress cosseting her, a transom on Hert's skyward tilt, speaking in the tongued riffs of the flute. Pestilence passing at her right hand, she eavesdrops across oceans of due diligence. Her language a history teeming with juju, symmetrical, effulgent, a cubist pageantry of Sunday hats. Donning the visage of the brown woman posed in daguerreotype, defiant, she trills the melisma of gospel, a restless spirit, clawing minstrelsy's hymnal of moans.
And our last reader of the evening is Kiely Todd Roska. Kiely is a hospice chaplain. She lives in Minnesota on land first loved and stewarded by the Dakota people, where she spends her time wrangling and or snuggling her spouse, 2 children, 1 dog, 10 chickens, and thousands of bees. Wow, maybe you wrangle bees more than snuggle them, but welcome, Kiely.
Thank you. I'm grateful to be here. I'm reading a flash nonfiction piece called God's Love is 2 Women from a Quilting Guild in Missoula, Montana. You fly halfway across the country to clean your mom's house and plan her funeral. She died by suicide a week and a half ago. For days, you and your sister sort dog dishes and dangly earrings and elephant-shaped plant holders. You drive back and forth to Goodwill. You fill a dumpster with broken lawn furniture and dog-haired covered rugs and freezer-burned food. You question the existence of God. You pray to a God you don't believe in. Your uncle and his sketchy buddy come over. They don't offer to help sort or clean or haul anything. Instead, they question why you have a dumpster and why you aren't organizing a garage sale. You tell them they are welcome to take anything out of the dumpster as long as they have their sale somewhere else. And so they do. They make a few $100 for themselves. You cancel credit cards with balances. You and your sister and your dad, who was divorced from your mom, pull your money to make the mortgage payment. You find the foamy pink curlers that your mom used to roll your hair for picture day, and her stained recipe card for caramel that she made every Christmas. Finally, you turn to the quilting stash. 4 sewing machines, reams of turquoise blue batiks, floral flannel, an actual rainbow riot of thread. The colors cascade off bookshelves and onto the floor. It's a crafter's version of a mad professor's library. Partially finished quilts cover the backs of chairs and what used to be the dining room table. You have no idea what to do with 28 quilts in various stages of completion. You don't sew. Your sister doesn't sew. Right now, you can't think of anyone who sews. On day 3 of the cleaning spree, 2 of your mom's quilting guild friends offer to help you figure out what to do with her sewing stuff. You have not met these women before. You were expecting advice about thrift stores and websites. Instead, the quilting women take one look at your greasy, unwashed hair and your sister's overplucked eyebrows. One woman whispers softly in the other's ear. The other woman nods once. They gather everything into the back of their Toyota Tundra and say something about organizing a sale. 4 months later, in time for your mom's funeral, they return with a check for $3,284 and all 28 quilts finished and folded. This is what the love of God feels like.
In some ways, the collection of people that are reading tonight are just the first 13 people that responded to Trisha's email. It seems like the programming was just perfect in terms of like the movement from one piece to another. So I really, really thank all of you. Really great work. I'm so thrilled that you also trust us to steward your work. It means a lot to all of us. I forgot to mention Catherine Culpa. She is going to teach a new class in March that we just put up. She just decided she had a week for it. It's a 1-week asynchronous flash class. So grab your spot if you're interested. And thank you guys. See you next time in about another 3 months.